Let's continue showcasing our power of storytelling. CBS News national security contributor Sam Vinograd. Sam, walk us through why this is so important and what the position of Attorney General really does to impact our national security.
Well, let's just remember, this is not happening in a domestic vacuum. The United States has traditionally been a leader in pushing for the rule of law globally, and I've worked with several attorney generals. The attorney general is a huge figure on the world stage, talking about upholding the rule of law, talking about ethics, talking about law enforcement. And so when Matt Gaetz was first named as Trump's intended nominee for the attorney general, I do think that there were massive reverberations globally as countries that used to look to the U.S. Attorney General as a symbol and as a leader start to question whether the U.S. would continue to play that kind of role under a Trump administration based upon Mr. Gaetz's rhetoric regarding the Department of Justice, corruption, the role of law enforcement, January 6th, and more. Now, fast forward to Mr. Gaetz withdrawing from consideration as an intended nominee. And I do think it undercuts confidence in President-elect Trump's process for identifying personnel. He literally has hundreds, if not thousands, of people that he could have picked for this position, and instead picked someone who had not just a very controversial and complicated past, but someone who very clearly couldn't even make it, more than a few days, if not a few weeks, as a contender. So I think it signals globally that President-elect Trump's personnel process is not ironclad, and further, just longer term, sheds doubt on the role that the next attorney general will play on the world stage.
We also just got this in from Senator Lindsey Graham. We wanted to show it to our viewers. Stay with me and we'll continue the conversation.
I just issued a statement. He withdrew. I respect his decision. Appreciate him offering himself for service at that level. Now on to somebody else.
But, sir, we read the statement, but when you were talking with other colleagues on the Judiciary Committee from your party, did you get the sense that they were already going to be a no on him? No. Is that why he resigned?
No. I got the sense that the process was going to be challenging, and he made the decision. You need to ask him. But here's what I would say. The president nominated somebody. They chose to not go forward. Now he'll nominate somebody else. All this interest about Republican nominees, I understand it, but where were most of y'all at when the Democrats were doing this? There was an allegation of rape by a woman against President Biden, and here's what I said. That's not the guy I know. Nobody did this. We sense that if you're a Republican, everything is true until you can prove yourself innocent. So as to Matt, he's withdrawn. Respect his service. As to what President Trump will do next, we will see. But I am committed to helping him where I can. I will not be a rubber stamp to his nominees, but I will also not engage in an angry mob mentality. Now, I have voted for almost everybody's nominees. And I can promise you, when a Democrat nominates somebody, I don't have this problem of walking down the hall with a microphone in my face. The double standard is atrocious, and it needs to stop.
What are you hoping to say? Thank you, Senator.
So some salt in his voice. First of all, in a very general sense, your reaction?
Unsurprising statements from Senator Graham. That was a pivot. And Senator Graham, right, who is a lawyer, who has a long history in the Senate, was unlikely to criticize a nominee that Mr. President-elect Trump had made, and instead flipped this into a double standard discussion about Democrat nominees versus Republican nominees. I do think it's worth noting, however, that comparing the allegations against Representative Gaetz to an allegation against President Biden is really mixing apples and oranges quite a bit. However, Senator Graham clearly wants to look forward rather than look back. And it's true, all eyes are now on who President-elect Trump is going to name. And again, as a security professional, both from a homeland perspective and national security perspective, I am very focused on whether President-elect Trump will name someone with adequate legal experience, adequate law enforcement experience, and someone who wants to continue serving this country and helping countries around the world establish the rule of law. So I too am looking forward, but conscious of the reverberations that this latest episode has had on just our global standing.
Which begs the question, was it really about Matt Gaetz in the mind of the president-elect, or was it about what the president-elect wanted to achieve through Matt Gaetz, those objectives. And that really speaks to the conversation I had with Major Garrett just a few minutes ago, where it's perhaps a not this guy, but then maybe this guy sort of dynamic there in Washington, D.C. The next person who's chosen, will it be about the person or will it be about those objectives? And if so, what are those objectives?
Well, I also think it begs a question of who is going to be a rubber stamp for President-elect Trump's nominees. Senator Graham is incredibly close with President Trump. As you heard him describe, however, he did make comments about President Biden's character when there was an allegation against him. And based upon the fact that Matt Gaetz withdrew from contention, it does signal to me that he felt that Republicans in the Senate were not going to be a rubber stamp for his nomination. So as President-elect Trump looks forward to the next Attorney General, he will undoubtedly pick somebody who aligns with his perspective on what he considers to be corruption at the Department of Justice, something I have not personally experienced in my years of working with them under various administrations, but corruption at the Department of Justice, as well as perceptions about January 6th, perceptions about Democrats, election quote unquote meddling, and more. So he will pick somebody aligned with his interests, but perhaps this time he will take a closer examination of what kinds of controversial issues and allegations plague a nominee so that he avoids, frankly, another public embarrassment like this one.
A quick question and a quick answer as we wrap with you. Do you see this as the first loss for the incoming Trump administration politically?
I do see this as a political loss for the incoming administration and likely augurs more careful consideration of personnel picks in the days ahead.